June 7, 1942, off the coast of Midway, Pacific Ocean. The first light of dawn struggled through a dense blanket of fog over the Pacific waters. Japanese lookouts, stationed along Midway's coral atolls, squinted toward the horizon, expecting perhaps a reconnaissance plane or a routine patrol. What they saw instead would linger in memory and report logs for the remainder of the war. Massive silhouettes of American warships emerging from the mist, silent, imposing, and seemingly conjured from nowhere. These were the vessels the Allies would later call the ghost ships, and their sudden appearance left seasoned Japanese officers and sailors alike speechless. Commanders from the 1st Naval Defense Squadron immediately attempted to verify the reports. Radar was primitive, signals were confused, and optical sightings yielded only hazy outlines. Yet there was no mistake. The fleet before them was real, operational, and advancing with precision. Aircraft carriers, cruisers, and destroyers formed a formation that defied conventional expectations of naval movement in enemy territory. Every ship seemed to glide effortlessly, engines barely audible through the damp morning air. The Japanese observers had underestimated American industrial coordination and strategic planning. Each vessel was a product of meticulous engineering, mass production efficiency, and a doctrine that prioritized operational reliability over theoretical design perfection. The ghost ships were not just instruments of war. They were psychological weapons designed to disorient, intimidate, and dominate the battlefield before a single shell was fired. By mid-morning, reports reached Tokyo. Commanders and strategists began reassessing assumptions about American capabilities. This fleeting apparition of power would foreshadow a shift in naval warfare and challenge Japan's entire Pacific strategy. If you want to witness the untold stories of World War II, daring operations, technological marvels, and moments that changed history, subscribe now and journey with us through the hidden depths of war, one incredible story at a time. June 7, 1942, Midway Atoll, Pacific Ocean. The first morning light broke through dense fog over the small coral atolls of Midway. Japanese lookouts, stationed on elevated observation posts, strained their eyes toward the horizon. Early reconnaissance had suggested nothing more than routine American patrols, yet what appeared over the mist was unprecedented. Massive silhouettes emerged: aircraft carriers, cruisers, and destroyers, moving with a precision and coordination that left observers frozen. These were the American ghost ships, a fleet whose sudden, silent appearance contradicted every assumption of Japanese naval intelligence. Commanders of the 1st Naval Defense Squadron immediately attempted to confirm the reports. Optical sights, binoculars, and primitive radar failed to resolve the fog-shrouded figures. Yet the formations were unmistakable, lines of vessels advancing as if the Pacific itself had delivered them out of nowhere. Japanese officers jotted frantic notes, the realization dawning that they faced an adversary capable of unprecedented operational coordination. By mid-morning, intelligence reports reached Tokyo, prompting urgent discussions within the combined fleet headquarters. Japan's assumption of American logistical limitations, the belief that long-distance operations across the Pacific would strain resources and reduce fleet effectiveness, was now under question. The ghost ships were not simply a naval presence. They were evidence of industrial capacity, strategic planning, and technological coordination that Japan had consistently underestimated. The carriers, in particular, showcased the United States Navy's growing mastery of naval aviation. Planes launched and recovered seamlessly, even as Japanese observations struggled to discern individual aircraft from the morning mist. The fleet's ability to operate undetected until the last possible moment illustrated a shift in naval doctrine. American planners had embraced mobility, flexibility, and operational endurance as their core advantage. The following morning, Japanese picket boats and outlying reconnaissance planes reported increased activity. Observers documented precise, synchronized maneuvers across the fleet, each ship maintaining formation as if guided by an invisible hand. The psychological effect on Japanese forces was immediate. Officers who had anticipated routine patrols now faced the overwhelming reality of superior organization, the kind that could threaten entire garrisons without warning. Japanese reports emphasized not just the fleet's composition, but its reliability. Unlike Japanese vessels, which frequently suffered mechanical interruptions due to overextended engines and supply limitations, the American ships functioned flawlessly across long stretches of open ocean. Every vessel, whether cruiser or destroyer, maintained propulsion, communication, and navigation systems with consistency that defied Japanese expectations. By the third day, the American fleet launched coordinated air strikes against Japanese outposts on Midway. Observers noted the precise timing of carrier launches, the rapid deployment of fighter and bomber squadrons, and the seamless return of aircraft to their decks. These operations, executed without detectable error or delay, revealed a level of operational planning that challenged every preconception held by Japanese naval strategists. Japanese garrison reports highlighted an unsettling pattern. The American ships were not merely present. They dictated the tempo of engagement. Every move by Japanese forces was reactive, a forced adaptation to an opponent whose capabilities seemed almost supernaturally reliable. Engineers and officers began questioning long-held beliefs about the sustainability of long-range naval operations, and a quiet fear began to permeate command posts across the islands. The ghost ships were tangible proof of American industrial prowess. Each carrier, battleship, and destroyer represented hundreds of thousands of man-hours, standardization in manufacturing, and logistical support stretching thousands of miles across the Pacific. Japanese intelligence had underestimated not only the raw number of American vessels, but the systemic reliability built into each hull, engine, and weapon system. Reports reached Japanese officers describing how engines maintained constant power despite prolonged high-speed maneuvers, how navigation systems allowed precise coordination in fog and open waters, and how crew rotations were sufficient to prevent fatigue from degrading operational efficiency. For the first time, Japanese planners confronted the reality that their enemy's advantage lay not solely in tactical acumen, but in industrial capacity and practical design philosophies embedded in every vessel. By the morning of June 10th, Japanese commanders had retreated to fortified positions, reassessing both their immediate defensive capabilities and the broader strategic picture. The appearance and operations of the ghost ships demonstrated a clear lesson. Technological sophistication without reliability was insufficient, while disciplined industrial output combined with practical operational planning could dominate even the most experienced enemy. Historical reports later revealed that Japanese confidence in their fleet suffered a decisive blow. The ghost ships were more than a tactical threat. They represented a paradigm shift in warfare, where logistical planning, industrial output, and operational reliability could outweigh sheer firepower or armor thickness. June 10th, 1942, early dawn, Midway Atoll. The morning fog over Midway had begun to lift, revealing the scale of the American naval presence. Japanese commanders stationed across the atoll and aboard distant ships faced an unsettling reality. The ghost ships were not a fleeting illusion. Aircraft carriers, cruisers, and destroyers, each meticulously maintained and operating in perfect synchronization, loomed across the horizon. The sight of these vessels, emerging from the haze like specters, immediately disrupted Japanese defensive plans. Observers noted that the American fleet moved with deliberate precision. Fighters and bombers were launched with exact timing, forming protective screens around carriers and targeting Japanese positions on the atoll. Radar and optical sightings were relayed to command posts, and officers struggled to reconcile the intelligence reports with the reality unfolding before their eyes. The ghost ships had turned the tide of perception. What was supposed to be a defensive stronghold now felt exposed, vulnerable to an enemy whose operational coordination exceeded expectation. The American fleet operated on principles of mobility, redundancy, and operational endurance. Each carrier maintained continuous aircraft sortie cycles, while destroyers patrolled perimeters to intercept reconnaissance or attack vessels. Crew rotations were meticulously scheduled, ensuring optimal alertness and sustained efficiency. Communications were centralized, allowing rapid response to emerging threats while maintaining strict radio discipline to prevent detection. Japanese intelligence, already challenged by incomplete data, was further confounded by the fleet's operational rhythm. Officers noted that American ships rarely paused. Engines maintained consistent power without overheating, and all navigation and targeting systems functioned flawlessly despite extended operational periods. This reliability contrasted sharply with Japanese vessels, which had experienced mechanical failures during long-range deployments in previous campaigns. By late morning, American aircraft began their first wave of attacks on Japanese outposts and positions around the atoll. Dive bombers and torpedo planes executed synchronized strikes, demonstrating tactical precision honed through rigorous training and planning. Japanese garrison reports highlighted the psychological impact of these operations. The precision and timing suggested a level of preparation and coordination previously unimagined. Observers aboard Japanese ships recorded the operational efficiency of the American carriers. Aircraft were launched and recovered repeatedly without error, engines and catapults functioning flawlessly. This operational reliability forced Japanese commanders into reactive maneuvers, continually adjusting defensive formations to counter the American advance. As night fell, Japanese naval officers attempted to regroup and assess the threat. Limited night vision capabilities and reliance on visual observation hindered effective response. American vessels, however, maintained strict operational discipline, using minimal light emissions and radar-assisted navigation to continue night operations. Reconnaissance planes patrolled perimeters, providing constant updates to command centers and allowing rapid redeployment of naval assets as needed. Reports from Japanese technical officers emphasized the contrast in design philosophy. American ships demonstrated practical engineering principles. Engines tolerant of extended operation, redundant systems capable of compensating for component failures, and crew procedures optimized for long-duration missions. Japanese counterparts recognized that these design philosophies were not just technical choices, but strategic advantages, allowing sustained operations in ways Japanese doctrine had never anticipated. By June 12, American forces launched coordinated air and naval assaults, targeting key positions across the atoll. Bombing runs were synchronized with naval artillery, forcing Japanese defensive positions into disarray. Officers aboard Japanese ships noted the fluidity of American tactics. Simultaneous air and naval maneuvers created overlapping zones of engagement, leaving Japanese units with few safe positions to operate from. Japanese garrison communications reflected growing alarm. Commanders repeatedly stressed the difficulty of predicting American movements, noting the ghost ship's ability to appear, strike, and reposition with near-perfect timing. The operational reliability of the American fleet ensured that even extended engagements did not degrade performance. Japanese vessels, by contrast, required constant maintenance and faced limitations in fuel, engine endurance, and mechanical resilience. By the end of the engagement period, Japanese command acknowledged a critical realization. The American industrial system had produced not only sufficient vessels to sustain prolonged operations, but had embedded reliability, redundancy, and operational flexibility into every ship. The ghost ships were tangible proof of industrial capacity, practical engineering, and strategic foresight. Japanese reports emphasized that tactical success now depended on anticipating not just American firepower, but their logistical endurance and mechanical reliability. For the first time, Japanese strategists understood that a fleet capable of sustained operations, launching aircraft, maneuvering without mechanical failure, and maintaining readiness, was more valuable than one optimized solely for raw firepower or armor. June 12, 1942 dawn, Pacific Theater. As the sun struggled to pierce the early morning haze over Midway, the ghost ships, American carriers, and supporting vessels were already in position. Japanese reconnaissance had identified the fleet, but could not predict its movements with certainty. Observers noted the seemingly effortless coordination. Destroyers screened carriers, cruisers maintained overlapping firing arcs, and aircraft squadrons prepared for simultaneous sorties. Every vessel functioned as a cog in a meticulously engineered machine, reflecting industrial and operational maturity that Japanese officers could scarcely comprehend. The Japanese fleet, anticipating a conventional American response, was immediately forced onto the defensive. Commanders aboard carriers and battleships documented the precision with which the Americans maneuvered, even in the confined Pacific waters around Midway. Engines maintained constant power without overheating, navigation systems worked seamlessly, and all onboard systems, communication, radar, weaponry, operated flawlessly. The ghost ships were more than ships. They were manifestations of an industrial philosophy emphasizing reliability, redundancy, and practical efficiency. By mid-morning, American aircraft launched the first coordinated assaults against Japanese carriers and positions. Dive bombers and torpedo planes executed precision attacks, taking advantage of coordinated intelligence from reconnaissance aircraft. Japanese gunners found themselves responding to multiple vectors simultaneously, each strike synchronized to perfection. Reports noted that even when a plane was lost or damaged, the carrier deck immediately replaced it with another, maintaining uninterrupted sortie cycles. Observers emphasized the operational reliability that allowed sustained sorties. Engines, catapults, and crew procedures were designed to function under continuous stress. The Japanese naval strategy, which had relied on brief bursts of concentrated power, could not match the tempo. Every tactical maneuver by Japanese vessels was reactionary, highlighting the psychological impact of facing an enemy whose ships and aircraft could operate continuously without mechanical degradation. Japanese commanders attempted to regroup and counterattack, but their efforts were hampered by mechanical limitations. Engines overheat, fuel consumption spiked, and coordinated maneuvers faltered under the strain of prolonged operations. By contrast, American ships sustained high-speed movements, maintained formation integrity, and executed precise attacks simultaneously. The operational consistency of the ghost ships allowed them to dictate the tempo of battle, forcing Japanese forces into defensive postures with little opportunity for initiative. Detailed logs from Japanese observation posts describe the psychological toll. Officers struggled to reconcile the size and persistence of the American fleet with previously held assumptions about industrial limitations and long-range operations. Each successful maneuver by the ghost ships reinforced the realization that American industrial and operational planning had reached a level that Japan could not match without risk of catastrophic failure. By the afternoon, American dive bombers had inflicted critical damage on Japanese carriers. Observers reported precision targeting of flight decks and munition stores, effectively neutralizing the enemy's ability to launch counterstrikes. Even damaged vessels were rapidly repaired or repositioned thanks to redundant engineering systems and disciplined crew operations. Japanese engineers and officers documented the contrast. American ships, though appearing equally vulnerable on paper, absorbed damage and continued operations with minimal performance loss. The ghost ship's ability to maintain operational integrity under sustained engagement highlighted a key principle. Reliability often outweighed raw power or armor. While Japanese ships had superior speed or firepower on paper, their frequent mechanical issues limited actual combat effectiveness. American vessels, less technically sophisticated in some respects, remained fully operational throughout the engagements, demonstrating the value of practical engineering and logistical foresight. As the battle concluded, Japanese commanders and observers were forced to reassess their assumptions. The ghost ships had achieved not only tactical objectives, but had imposed a psychological dominance. Their reliability, operational endurance, and coordinated maneuvers created the perception of omnipresence, causing hesitation and miscalculations among Japanese leadership. Reports highlighted that the psychological effect was as decisive as the physical damage inflicted. The operational philosophy behind the ghost ships became evident. American industrial capacity allowed ships to be built with practical redundancy, standardized components, and operational reliability that Japanese naval doctrine had neglected. Crews could maintain vessels in continuous operation without specialized knowledge, while Japanese ships required highly trained personnel and frequent maintenance breaks. This difference in design philosophy, practical reliability versus theoretical superiority, proved decisive in the outcome of Midway engagements. June 15, 1942 dawn, Midway Atoll. The first light of day illuminated a battlefield transformed. Japanese commanders and observers faced the grim reality. The American ghost ships had not only survived the engagements of the past week, but had decisively demonstrated operational superiority. Damage assessments from Japanese garrisons revealed significant losses among carriers and support vessels, while American losses remained minimal, highlighting both tactical skill and mechanical reliability. Japanese reports described the immediate challenges: coordinating remaining naval assets, repairing damaged ships under threat of renewed attack, and reassessing defensive positions across the Pacific. Commanders began to recognize that their assumptions about American operational limitations were flawed. The ghost ships had arrived in force, executed precision strikes, and maintained continuous operations, defying all expectations about logistical strain and mechanical endurance. Japanese naval intelligence units scrambled to analyze American operational patterns. Photographs, intercepted communications, and reconnaissance reports were studied in exhaustive detail. Analysts noted several key differences between American and Japanese naval philosophy. 1. Standardization and redundancy. American ships were built with interchangeable components, allowing rapid repair and minimal downtime. Japanese vessels, although technically sophisticated, relied on complex systems requiring specialized knowledge for maintenance. 2. Operational endurance. Engines and power systems on American ships tolerated extended periods of high-speed maneuvers without overheating, while Japanese vessels frequently faced mechanical limitations after prolonged activity. 3. Crew efficiency. American naval crews operated on disciplined rotations, ensuring minimal fatigue and sustained performance. Japanese crews, stretched thin, faced the dual burden of combat operations and maintenance demands. These observations led Japanese engineers to question long-held assumptions. They recognized that American naval superiority was not solely a matter of firepower or armor, but rooted in practical design, industrial foresight, and operational reliability. In Tokyo, the combined fleet convened emergency meetings. Japanese strategists faced difficult decisions: how to reallocate scarce resources, whether to attempt immediate counterattacks, and how to defend remaining positions across the Pacific. The ghost ships had forced a strategic recalibration. Japanese planners realized that future engagements could no longer rely on localized superiority. American operational endurance and industrial capacity ensured that prolonged campaigns would favor the United States. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto and senior officers emphasized the need for mechanical reliability in fleet operations. Reports highlighted that Japanese vessels often broke down during long deployments, limiting their ability to project power across vast distances. In contrast, American ships operated consistently, sustaining high-tempo operations while maintaining mechanical integrity. This reliability allowed American forces to dictate the tempo of engagements, striking decisively at multiple targets before Japanese forces could respond. The psychological impact on Japanese forces was profound. Commanders reported hesitation among officers previously confident in their tactical planning. The ghost ships had created a perception of invincibility, forcing Japanese units to operate reactively rather than proactively. Officers documented the unsettling realization that American vessels were not only numerous, but fundamentally reliable. Ships could reach forward positions, launch repeated sorties, and recover from damage far more effectively than Japanese planners had assumed possible. Reports from Midway garrisons described repeated attempts to predict American movements, all of which failed. The precision of carrier launches, coordinated air sorties, and timely maneuvering of support vessels created overlapping zones of operational control that Japanese forces could not penetrate. Even minor mechanical issues in Japanese ships were amplified under sustained operational tempo, forcing defensive postures and limiting offensive capability. As news of the engagements spread through Japanese command networks, the broader implications became clear. American industrial capacity allowed the rapid construction, deployment, and replacement of vessels, ensuring that operational attrition could be mitigated quickly. Japanese strategy, dependent on fewer ships with greater technical sophistication, could not match the operational tempo and endurance demonstrated by the Ghost ships. Analysts noted that American design philosophy prioritized reliability and practical functionality over theoretical maximums. Engines, propulsion systems, and deck operations were optimized for continuous use by crews with standard training, allowing the fleet to sustain operations across extended distances. Japanese vessels, designed for peak performance with precise tolerances, faltered under prolonged stress, highlighting the strategic advantage of industrial maturity and practical engineering. June 21, 1942 dawn, Pacific Theater. In the wake of the Midway engagement, American forces consolidated their positions and prepared for follow-up operations. Ghost ships, the carriers, cruisers, and supporting vessels remained fully operational, their engines and systems having endured repeated sorties with minimal maintenance requirements. Observers noted that the fleet's readiness and operational flexibility allowed immediate redeployment to critical zones, a capability that Japanese planners could not match. American strategy now emphasized sustained offensive pressure. Aircraft carriers were rotated in patrol patterns that maintained continuous air coverage, while destroyers and cruisers established layered defensive perimeters. Supply chains, meticulously planned, ensured fuel, munitions, and provisions were delivered without interruption. This logistical consistency reinforced the fleet's operational reliability, allowing American commanders to execute complex maneuvers with precision and confidence. Additional American carriers, including the Enterprise and Hornet, arrived to reinforce existing positions. Each vessel, freshly provisioned and fully crewed, immediately integrated into the operational framework. Coordination between carriers was seamless, with standardized procedures ensuring rapid communication, synchronized sorties, and overlapping zones of coverage. Crew rotations and maintenance schedules were designed to maximize operational tempo while minimizing fatigue. Japanese intelligence struggled to interpret these reinforcements. Analysts noted that American vessels were not merely replacing losses. They were expanding operational reach, maintaining pressure across multiple theaters simultaneously. The concept of operational endurance, previously underappreciated, became a central focus of Japanese tactical recalibration. Reports highlighted that American industrial output enabled not only replacement, but rapid reinforcement, a strategic advantage that Japanese production capacity could not replicate. June 28, 1942, Japanese tactical adjustments. Japanese commanders attempted to adapt. Plans were revised to improve fleet mobility, optimize aircraft deployment, and compensate for observed mechanical vulnerabilities. Engineers focused on reducing strain on engines and propulsion systems, while tactical officers emphasized staggered sortie schedules to avoid overtaxing ships. However, these measures could not replicate the inherent reliability and redundancy of American vessels. Each operational adjustment highlighted the limitations of Japanese design philosophy, which prioritized theoretical maximum performance over sustained functionality. Reports from Japanese officers documented the consequences. Even with staggered operations, engines overheated more frequently than American counterparts, and minor mechanical failures accumulated, reducing operational effectiveness. Crew fatigue became a compounding factor, as prolonged maintenance tasks interrupted combat readiness. Observers concluded that Japanese tactical adaptations could mitigate some disadvantages, but could not overcome the fundamental industrial and engineering gap. American commanders leveraged their operational reliability to conduct coordinated strikes against Japanese outposts and supply lines. Carriers launched air sorties with precision timing, supported by cruisers and destroyers providing suppressive fire. Damage assessments showed that American strikes disrupted Japanese logistics, reduced the operational readiness of enemy vessels, and further eroded morale. The ghost ships demonstrated a key principle: reliability and endurance translate directly into strategic flexibility. While Japanese vessels required extensive downtime for repairs and maintenance, American ships remained fully operational, able to respond rapidly to emerging threats. This operational tempo created an environment in which Japanese forces were perpetually reacting, never initiating. By early July, Japanese forces acknowledged the broader implications of American operational superiority. Commanders reported that continuous American pressure, combined with fleet reliability, imposed severe psychological strain. The ghost ships had created a perception of omnipresence, forcing Japanese units to adopt overly cautious postures. Analysts noted that this psychological dominance directly influenced decision-making, often slowing responses and increasing susceptibility to American tactical initiatives. Operational logs highlighted a consistent pattern. American ships maintained high availability, executed complex maneuvers without mechanical failures, and integrated new reinforcements seamlessly. Japanese vessels, despite technical sophistication, continued to experience operational degradation under sustained engagement. The contrast underscored the decisive advantage of industrial capacity, practical engineering, and crew training built around reliability rather than theoretical performance. July 11, 1942 dawn, Pacific Theater. The sun rose over the Pacific, revealing the strategic consequences of a week dominated by operational reliability and coordinated American maneuvers. The ghost ships, fully operational and unbroken by the rigors of continuous sorties, had inflicted irreversible damage on Japanese capabilities. Carrier air wings were fully mission-capable. Cruisers maintained formation integrity, and destroyers executed complex defensive patterns without faltering. Japanese commanders, meanwhile, faced a grim assessment. Damaged ships, limited reinforcements, and mechanical vulnerabilities constrained their ability to project power effectively. Reports emphasized a recurring theme. Theoretical superiority and advanced engineering specifications were meaningless if ships could not sustain operations under real-world conditions. The Japanese Navy, despite technical sophistication, had failed to match the operational endurance and reliability demonstrated by American forces. American officers conducted comprehensive after-action reviews, analyzing sortie efficiency, damage mitigation, and logistical performance. The results confirmed what engineers and strategists had anticipated. Operational reliability translated directly into strategic dominance. Aircraft launches maintained uninterrupted cycles. Damage control teams repaired minor breaches almost instantly, and resupply operations ensured continuous readiness. The ghost ships exemplified a design philosophy prioritizing practical functionality over theoretical maximums. Redundant systems, standardized components, and robust engineering principles allowed American vessels to remain operational when Japanese ships faltered. This practical approach ensured that fleet movements dictated the tempo of engagements, allowing American forces to execute offensive strategies at will. Japanese observers documented repeated failures to adapt to American momentum. Attempts to stagger deployments, prioritize maintenance, and reinforce vulnerable units proved insufficient. Engine overheating, weapon misalignment, and limited fuel reserves forced Japanese commanders to adopt defensive postures. Every operational misstep underscored a fundamental lesson. Mechanical reliability and industrial capacity often outweigh theoretical performance advantages in determining battlefield outcomes. Reports highlighted that Japanese naval doctrine, emphasizing peak performance with exacting technical specifications, could not sustain prolonged operations. In contrast, American vessels, designed with operational margins and practical redundancy, continued executing complex maneuvers, demonstrating the strategic impact of industrial foresight and engineering maturity. By mid-July, the implications for the broader Pacific theater became clear. The Ghost ships had not merely won engagements. They had redefined the parameters of naval warfare. Operational endurance, logistical efficiency, and practical design philosophy became as decisive as armament, armor, or tactical brilliance. Japanese planners recognized that continued attrition in the face of such operational superiority would inevitably lead to strategic losses. Historians and analysts would later document the psychological and operational dominance of American forces. The Ghost ship's ability to sustain continuous operations under combat conditions created a cascading effect. Japanese forces hesitated, miscalculated, and ultimately ceded the initiative. Operational superiority, derived from industrial capacity and engineering reliability, proved decisive in shaping the course of the Pacific conflict. The story of the Ghost ships is a testament to industrial foresight, engineering principles, and human discipline. These vessels, fully operational despite relentless engagement, demonstrated that practical reliability and operational consistency often determine victory in modern warfare. While technological sophistication and theoretical superiority are important, they're secondary to the ability to sustain combat effectiveness over time. Now, witness the untold story of how operational reliability, industrial excellence, and relentless ingenuity reshaped naval history. Subscribe and join us as we uncover the full legacy of the Ghost ships, how strategy, engineering, and human determination converge to define victory. Dive deeper, explore the innovations, and see why reliability outmatched raw power in one of the most pivotal chapters of World War II.